Now, from what I remember, the session was being paid for by Twism. I think I'm right here. I could be wrong, but I think Twism was paying for this, which means it was Shaq's money, you know? And so these dudes showed up in limos with models and bottles, and you know what I mean? They showed up like they had 1 million records sold already, you know what I'm saying? Shout out those dudes, man. Lord Tariq, Peter Gunz, good people, man. So they came in, and we did a little partying first. Not partying, but, you know, they were having a couple of sippies and, you know what I'm saying, chilling, just, you know, a little bit of a loungy vibe, you know what I'm saying? And I'll give it to those dudes, man. Once we got the beat, you know, it wasn't much to do, but once we got it right, they went in and knocked that out. I think Peter Gunz did that in 2 takes. I think he did it once and was like, okay, let me do it one more time. And he did it, and he came out the booth and was like, we got a hit like that. He knew right away what they had. Now, me, I was like, well, it's Steely Dan and they rap. It sounded like a mixtape song to me, just because this production was kind of simple and stripped down. And then Lord Tariq went in and killed it, and then he made that record. And that record was crazy. Like, we felt good. You know, we felt like we had a hit. But me, as an engineer, I worked on a lot of records I thought was going to be hits. You know what I mean? And weren't. So they laid their stuff down, killed it quick. And then they were out. They were out. It was literally like a movie. They had their bottles and the chicks, and they jumped in the limo. And the funny part was, before they jetted, they were talking, and Peter Gunz tells the story better than I do, of course, but he talks about saying to Shaq, well, you have a studio in your house, so why don't we just come and record our album at your house? And like before he's like, before he even gets the words out, Shaq's like, no, that's dead. That's not happening at all. Like, not having y'all in my house to record nothing. And so they jet, and we had to mix that record. I don't know if we mixed it that night, if we mixed it the next day or something. But we literally mixed that record for mad hours to get it right. And not so much that it was difficult, but there was a certain sound that they wanted. And it took a long time to do. And what took the longest is before Pro Tools. So what took the longest was making a clean edit. And those choruses have the N word in each. You know what I'm saying? So I had to figure out a way to get rid of that. And this is before we're like going in and putting it reversed, or so it was just a blank space. And they're like, no, we don't need a blank space. The producer's like, we don't need a blank space. We need something in that space. I'm like, well, what? And that's where I came up with the idea to double the word before. So it's Brooklyn, crazy game. That's why it goes that way. Because I realized what they wanted. And this is before, like I said, before Pro Tools. So they wanted it that way. They didn't want to go do it at mastering. They didn't want to go do edits. They wanted it that way on the mix. And so we spent mad hours figuring that out. And we're literally doing science. Like, okay, maybe I could put it on this button and then, you know, like put this fader up and then take it down. And then we were literally doing rocket science to figure it out. It shouldn't have been that, but it was to figure it out the way that they wanted to hear it. You know, when someone who doesn't know technically how to tell you what they hear, you have to like decipher that. You got to listen and be like, oh, you want it like what? Now, as simple as it seems now that you hear it back, know that we were going back and forth. I was like sampling things and putting them in it. Nah, we don't want a sound effect on it. You know what I mean? Like, we went through it to get it done. And look what happened. It made sense, because I remember, shout out my man Kevin Mitchell. That was the cat that was handling that whole thing. And I think the producer's name was KNS, I think. Good dude. All good people. That's why that record's so good, because it was just all good vibes while they made it, you know? And I remember they were leaving out, and I was like, good luck with the record, man. You know, they were talking about putting it out independently. And I don't know, it must have been like 3 weeks later, Funkmaster Flex is like 1 million bombs, I think I heard when I heard it, when he debuted it. And that, you know, especially in that time frame, was that like 96, 97 or something? We're talking about like New York is on fire when he drops those bombs. And I'm like, oh, that's that record? I mean, that's the first time I really saw a record that I mixed, and I did, I did everything until they re-released it. They mixed it again with my man, for the Columbia release, with my man, Duro. And it was funny because I think they played over the thing that they ended up using for Shakira and all that. I think they had to play that over, as I remember, because they didn't want to get caught up in another sample issue, because by then they were dealing with Steely Dan. And really, people should know that Peter Gunz didn't get sued or take that down or none of that. What happened was, when they went to put it out, they had to clear it. When they put it out at first and Funkmaster Flex was dropping bombs on it, it was Red Label. It was just a record. It wasn't through some big company, I mean, yeah, Twism was probably behind it, but as far as what they put out, it was, for those who know, it was just a Red Label that said Deja Vu on it. You know what I mean? Peter Gunz, Lord Tariq, Deja Vu. And then had Marmalade on the other side. But then they remixed it to put it out with Columbia, and that's when they had to deal with Steely Dan. And they did not get sued. What happened was, to use it was, I think Steely Dan was upset. I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think they were upset that they used it and put it out without clearing it. And so when they came to them like, yeah, we want to clear it because now it's coming out on Columbia, they were like, no, like, we don't want to do it. And they were like, well, it's already a record. Like, we need to make this happen, And so they just took all the money and all the publishing. And that's what happened. They didn't get sued, And of course, these record companies are scared as shit, so they don't care if the album's good or if anything's anything. They just looked at it like, oh, these are lawsuits, and so I'm sure they looked at Lord Tariq and Peter Gunz like, and that goes to show you that business, handle it early, handle it at the independent level, because then when you come against, a good example is Tone Loc and Delicious Vinyl with the Wild Thing sample. They went at Van Halen early, just mixed the record, was still independent. I think they paid like $3,000 or something to clear that sample from Van Halen. And then that became one of the biggest and you know what I'm saying? So they didn't have to go back to Van Halen. I'm sure they got publishing. I'm sure they got maybe some points. But as far as to use it, Steely Dan got them hit them in the checkbook for using it. Get it right. It was a sample clearance. It was from what could have been small. You know what I'm saying? It could have been $5,000. But because of the way it went, I don't think they expected it to really blow. I think they were thinking it would be a good buzz single. And then it caught on nationwide. I don't think they thought that Uptown Baby would catch on in other places. But it did. And I mean, they ended up doing versions for Cali, where they're shouting out all the... I got versions of every city. That's why it blew so well, because then they did customized versions for Miami. Did a customized version for California. Did a customized version for Texas. You know what I mean? And that's how they won, because they would say the people in the areas of those places, Houston or whatever, Houston Cats Got Crazy Game or whatever. I don't remember how it went, but it was the same song with different cities in it. And that's how they won. And had they cleared that sample, it's all about handling your business. If they cleared that sample, they would have really saw the... And all I'm trying to get that plaque, so I wasn't around to get it. That's the only plaque I don't have that I should have that one on the wall. So one of the coolest things that happened after the Lord Tariq Peter Gunz blew up was I was at the studio doing some random session. I don't even remember what it was. And the door opened, and it was Peter Gunz. It was like a year later. The song was huge. They were the biggest thing out. And Peter Gunz came in. He looked right at me, and he said, "Nastee, I'm glad you're here." And I said, what's good? He gave a pound, and he said, "Yo, we made history together." And he said, "And I brought the people from the record label to see where we captured lightning in the bottle," or something like that. I don't want to say exactly what he said. I don't remember exact word for word. But he said something about we made history, caught lightning in the bottle. And this is where we did it. And that was beautiful. You know what I'm saying? Because it was a recognition. It wasn't just a plaque or whatever. It was a pound and that's what's up. You know what I'm saying? And it was genuine. And I had to give him a lot of props for that, because a lot of artists I know he's all catching heat for not being genuine on a TV show and all that. But what I saw was a real genuine dude that came from his heart. He was really like, yo, we made it. Like, I tried to make a hit and I did. And you helped me. So that was the shit.